Welcome back to Unstuffy and Unstoppable, the South Coast Symphony's free streaming and on-demand music series. Tonight, we depart from our normal format. A few weeks ago, Linda Sue Marks, a percussionist in our symphony, suggested that I be interviewed for an episode to give our audience a bit of an insight into my background and experiences. Well, I thought about it and I finally decided to do it, if my lifelong friend, colleague, and teacher would do the interview. That's Linda Sue, who was my first marimba teacher way back when I was just 16. She was an inspiring teacher, later a colleague in the Long Beach Symphony, and now is an esteemed member of our percussion section. I have invited Linda Sue over to my home today, and we will begin in the hallway where I have a collection of mementos. And Linda Sue, this is my wall of memories. Let's start at the very beginning. When I was like a year or 2 years old, my mom and my dad. The next picture I've got is when I was in junior high school. This is me playing the marimba. And over here, I was in a Dixieland group called the Red Hots. I'm playing the piano, and my buddy comes to all of our South Coast Symphony concerts, Drake Jenkins, on drum set. Then the next picture we have is college. And here's my Master's of Music degree from USC. After that, after I left USC, I started playing with the LA Phil. Here's a picture that Bill Kraft, the timpanist and assistant conductor of the Phil, gave me. It was a big performance that we recorded, I think, for Decca on this one. And then we also recorded this album, Percussion by William Kraft. That was in 1970. And from there, I went to Israel. And a picture of the Israel Philharmonic is over here. This is Zubin Mehta. That's me way in the back at the timpani. Then I came back to Orange County, and here I am playing in the pageant of the Master's Pit. I played there for 4 years. After that, I started my teaching career, and here is a picture of one of the first junior highs I ever taught at. This is Aliso Viejo Middle School. I had the pleasure of opening that school up, and we had just great kids there. After that, let's see, this is my retirement from 20 years of teaching at the Capistrano Unified School District. And then, here's a picture when I was at OCSA with one of my concert orchestras.
That's Barry, how nice to see you.
And you.
How long have we known each other?
Well, if I tell you how long we've known each other, then from my intro, they'll know how old I am. But we've known each other for over 60 years.
Oh my gosh. So, all right, I've always wanted to know, what instrument did your parents buy you? What did they give you to play with musically?
Yeah, so the very first instrument was the piano, because that's what we had in our home. My mom had a piano. And so at age 3, she decided, let's give Barry piano lessons. So off we went to a piano teacher, and I found myself just fascinated with her cat. I could care less about the piano. So that didn't work out really well. So another 2 years went by, and she found me another piano teacher. And it was in downtown Long Beach on the 3rd floor of some bank building. And this particular teacher specialized in right hand. That's what she taught me, my right hand. However, I'm left-handed, and with small motor skills, I wasn't doing so well with the right hand. So it was a real struggle that first year or two, studying with her. She just didn't want to have much to do with my left hand. So then many years passed, and I kept playing the piano. When I got to the 6th grade, I have small hands. I was lucky to hit an octave. I realized piano was probably not going to be it, and they passed around a list of instruments. And on that list was the marimba. And I thought, wow, same keyboard, 2 sticks, not 10 fingers. So that's for me. And I just fell in love with the marimba. And after that, the timpani and cymbals and all the percussion My mom bought me, she looked in the classified section and bought me a marimba for $200, which I used all the way through college.
Well, when did you start private lessons?
So my first private lessons was with you when I was 16 on the marimba. And I thought you were so much older than you were. Little did I know that we were very close in age.
So, and I remember you coming dripping wet. You came from water polo to your lesson.
So for 1 year, I love swimming, and I swam all the way through junior high and high school. I still swim. So I got on the swim team and the water polo team. And yes, I'm sure that I didn't dry off enough for my lessons.
But you played also in some kind of jazz or Dixieland band while you were in high school too, didn't you?
So in high school, besides being in the band and orchestra, I formed the Aries Orchestra, which was a dance band. And we would rehearse on the weekends in my parents' outdoor patio. We got lots of rave reviews from the neighbors, even blocks away. And we did dances. And then we ended up going on during Christmas time. The band would kind of convert, and we'd play Christmas carols in downtown Long Beach to raise money for the City of Hope.
On Pine Street.
On Pine Street, exactly. And then we would go to various homes, and we would carol for them. They would give money to the City of Hope and invite us in for cookies and hot drinks, and then we got invited to start doing Christmas Eve services at the various churches in downtown Long Beach.
I wanted to go back a little bit because you went to ArrowBear Music Camp.
Right.
And some of your high school teachers were teaching there?
My high school teacher taught there, and my junior high school teacher did.
And so how did you get connected to Idyllwild?
Well, first I want to tell you one of my favorite stories about ArrowBear, and then I'll tell you my connection with Idyllwild.
Okay.
So I was in the 8th grade, and what I really wanted to do was be in the all-city high school orchestra that Fred Ohlendorf, who founded ArrowBear Music Camp, he was the conductor, and he also ran the camp. So instead, in the afternoons, we'd all go off to Lake Arrowhead. We'd go ice skating in Blue Jay. I decided, no, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to get really good on the timpani. So I would stay in camp. And I was a little shy, so I was kind of nervous about being around the other kids that I didn't know. And I stayed in camp, and I practiced timpani. And I practiced timpani for 2 hours, from like 2 to 4. And on my second day, Fred Ohlendorf walks down to the band bowl, and he says, if you'll stop practicing timpani, I'll put you in the all-city orchestra. Because I was keeping everybody up from their naps while the kids were gone. So, Idyllwild. My first year in college, the Idyllwild Youth Symphony Orchestra was going to take a tour of England and Wales. And my percussion friend, Karen Irvin, who was in the Idyllwild Orchestra playing timpani, said to me 10 days before the trip was supposed to take place, she said, I've toured all my life with my parents. I don't want to go on any more trips. Barry, will you play timpani in the orchestra? So I checked with my family. They said, okay. And that was it. And I joined the orchestra 10 days before the tour. And then we went to England and Wales for 3 weeks. And I got to know all the kids up in Idyllwild. The following 2 summers, I worked as camp counselor and coach up at the Idyllwild School of Music and the Arts. In 1965, another musical concert tour was organized for the Idyllwild Youth Symphony Orchestra. This time, the trip was documented by a film crew that would eventually become a movie, narrated by the music man himself, Meredith Willson. After rehearsing for weeks up in Idyllwild, we packed up everything for the trip and flew to Scandinavia, where we performed in Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. While in Norway, we paid a visit to Grieg's home and his final resting place.
Barry, have you seen Grieg's tomb?
Yes, I've just come from there. It was very impressive.
I think that's what...
How did you go from high school to choose USC?
So I applied to 3 different schools. I'd already been active at Cal State Long Beach. In the summers, I went there and played in their symphony orchestra. I got to know some people there. USC had a fabulous reputation, so I applied to USC. And then I applied to the Eastman School of Music.
When you went to USC, who were your mentors that really influenced you in a lot of ways, musically, conducting-wise? Who were those people?
When I was in the 8th grade, I made a decision that I wanted to be a music educator. I had had such a fantastic experience in junior high, and it continued through high school. So I was really looking for, and I knew that SC had a very strong music education program. That was one of the main reasons I went there. So in my junior year, after doing all the basics, I got into my first class of Mu Ed with a legend, Dr. Ralph Rush. Ralph, unfortunately, got a blood disorder and died halfway through my first semester. And so I never really got to experience Ralph. But I did remember this one story very early into the class when one of the students, second class, came in about 30 seconds late. And Ralph looked up and he said, "If you ever do that again, you're not going to go in music education because teachers do not come in late." So that's what I missed for the next couple of years. And Dr. James Hahn Schumacher took over after him. And he was gifted in how his approach to how we should teach music. I learned how I could teach young kids opera and ballet and musical theater and classical music and pop and make it fun for them. So I'll always remember that about Hans Schumacher. He was in charge of, he was the master teacher for music education when I was doing my student teaching. But more importantly for me, during my master's work at SC, I formed the Pacific Percussion Ensemble. And that organization later played for an organization called Young Audiences. It was a national chapter, and we did Young Audiences of Los Angeles. And we formed the group, and Dr. Hans Schumacher was instrumental in helping me revise and write the script, figure out the repertoire for the percussion ensemble. And from there, we went on to do over 300 youth concerts all over Southern California. And I think in 1969, we were invited to the national chapter, and we went to Seattle, Washington, and performed for the national convention. So that was very exciting.
That takes part of your history of music education. And what about percussion?
So percussion. I had some wonderful teachers when I first started out, but there were other teachers in Los Angeles that were just fantastic. William Kraft, #1. He was the assistant conductor of the LA Phil at the time, the principal timpanist, crafted many of the young people's concerts. And everybody said, he's the best. You got to go study with William Kraft. And then there was Earl Hatch. He had this incredible marimba studio in North Hollywood. Right. So we went to the administration at USC in my second year and said, can we put them on the faculty? And they said, unbelievably, yes. So we got them both on, so we could we were all studying there. Now we just wanted to get credit for it.
Of course.
So with Bill, since he was such a fabulous percussionist and composer and conductor, there was so much to learn from him. I would say I learned more music, how to interpret music than play timpani. And I also know how to make a great spaghetti sauce at his home. I still do that till this day.
How did that work with him lead to your work with the LA Phil?
It was in my senior year at SC, working on my bachelor's, that I was asked to do a Monday evening concert. And to do a Monday evening concert, I had to join the union. Once you join the union, then all the other orchestras you're playing with have to accept you as a union player rather than somebody they're paying. Well, when I first played with the Long Beach Symphony, I would do a number of rehearsals and a concert, and they would give me $25, and then they would ask me to turn it back over to them because they didn't have enough money to pay the other musicians. And it was sort of the same thing. I played in a lot of different groups when I was going to SC, and very little money, but fantastic experience. So when I turned union, the first job was doing 3 weeks with Pierre Boulez.
Wow.
And Pierre Boulez, one of the great conductors of our century, took over the New York Philharmonic. We worked intimately with him for 3 weeks on chamber music, and that was just an incredible thrill. So people started to get to know who I was, and in 1 week, I got a call to play the Glendale Symphony as a union player. And then on the same week, I got a call to play the LA Phil. So I ended up running into 2 wonderful contractors who kind of got me started in the business in LA.
So how did the LA Phil merge into your work with the Israel Philharmonic?
The Israel Philharmonic was looking for a timpanist, head of the percussion section. And Bill Kraft told me, they're looking for a timpanist. How would you like to do an audition for Zubin Mehta tomorrow? And I said, tomorrow? I'd like to have a week to prepare for an audition like that. Well, during that week, we were recording for London Records in Royce Hall with the LA Phil, and I was on the call for the entire week. Now, for 3 years, I played extra percussion in the LA Phil, and Mehta never gave me a look or the time of day. Now he knew I was auditioning for the Israel Philharmonic, where he was the principal conductor, and he gave me more cues than one could possibly imagine. And so by the time we finished that week of recording at Royce Hall, I went for my audition, but it was already a done deal.
That's great.
3 weeks later, renting out my house, selling 2 cars, they wanted me to go almost immediately, and we were on our way to Israel.
And how long were you there?
I was there almost 4 years. So we had an Israeli conductor the first day that I arrived, and the entire rehearsal was in Hebrew. But he knew that I had just entered the orchestra, so he's talking in Hebrew, then he would look back at me, measure 33. So I at least knew where we were starting. That was my introduction.
So did you play timpani over there or other percussion?
I was principal timpanist and head of the percussion section, and it was a co-principal job the whole time I was there.
How many percussionists were in the section?
There was 4 regulars and 1 regular extra.
And were they there like you were, just for a 4-year period?
They were all Israelis, and as it turned out, I became an Israeli citizen after 3 years.
Did you have to speak then the language?
No. Although leaving the country was quite interesting, but no, I didn't have to speak Hebrew. Everybody in Israel, throughout the entire country, the 2 national languages are Hebrew and English. And in Jerusalem, there's 3 languages. The other one is Arabic. And
what brought you out of Israel?
A war. So I was there in 1973 during the Yom Kippur War. So on Yom Kippur, we're minding our business, and at 1 o'clock the air raid sirens go off, and that's when I discovered that every single building in Israel has a fallout shelter. And so we went downstairs for about an hour and a half and waited for an all clear. And on the radio, we're hearing all of these codes being broadcast to all of the troops where they needed to go. But it was all in code. I remember that. So for the next 3.5 weeks, we were at war. The first day, we didn't play at all with the orchestra. There was no orchestra. There was no nothing. People were going around painting our cars and windows, closing our windows up so there was no light in Tel Aviv at all. And then we started performing. We went by night without lights on our buses. We would go to various places to perform. I remember one time we went up north of Haifa to an army encampment, and we performed for the troops with gunfire in the distance. It was a scary 3.5 weeks.
Do you remember what you played when you were playing for the
Well,
troops?
we did an awful lot of Israeli patriotic music, but then we had regular concerts as well.
Mm-hmm. And when you did the regular concerts prior to the war, what was your favorite?
The memories I have of Israel are the fact that we had some of the world's greatest conductors and greatest soloists, Heifetz, Piatigorsky, Primrose, just everybody. Everybody came to Israel to perform for the orchestra. So those experiences were unique. We did 2 major tours, the music capitals of Europe, one summer, and then we did South, Central, and North America for another summer. One of the things that first happened when I was there, is that we got a chance to perform a full-length opera of Samson and Delilah at the old ancient city of Caesarea on the sea in their amphitheater, and they built these arches that Samson was tied up to, and with the chains they all collapsed around us, and it was so dramatic. They brought in the opera singers from La Scala for that performance.
What other wonderful conductors do you remember?
Well, you know, we all have our boyhood idols, and certainly for any of us who love conducting and love classical music, Leonard Bernstein was it. I mean, his young people's concerts, I watched those, and I'm sure that was a huge influence in making me decide to do some conducting. So in my second year in Israel, who comes to guest conduct but Leonard Bernstein? And we had a chance to premiere his orchestral version, the 3 movements of his new Mass. That was very exciting. But then, the following season, London Records came out. We went to Jerusalem, and we recorded Brahms' First, Brahms' Third, and the Mahler Das Lied from die Erde.
Oh, I love that piece.
Oh, just wonderful. Christa Ludwig, I can't remember all the soloists. So we had the world's top performers in Bernstein conducting, and I got to play timpani on the Brahms 1 and orchestra bells and gong on Das Lied from die Erde. You know, there are 2 basic kinds of conductors. There's Zubin Mehta, and he's a performance conductor. He likes to have things happen at a performance, and he's so clear to watch. You can tell a mezzo piano from a mezzo forte. The nuances in his conducting are just incredible. So, and then there's conductors, and Bernstein's like that as well. I mean, he teaches you the music, but boy, he's somewhere else when it comes to performance. And there's George Solti. George Solti was conductor of Chicago Symphony and so many other orchestras, but he was a rehearsal conductor. Difficult to follow, but he did all of his teaching in rehearsal.
I would like to know how you came into your teaching career, if you've played with the LA Phil and the Israel Phil, with all of these great conductors. How did you get into your teaching career?
So my goal was to be a high school band and orchestra director. That's what I really wanted to do. But by the time I left USC, I had a double major, percussion and music education. And in my own head, I had a 3rd major of conducting. I took as many conducting classes as I could. But when I left, I was already working professionally a lot, more than I thought I would be. So I continued my professional career, but along with that, we had the Pacific Percussion Ensemble, which did hundreds of concerts for young kids. We'd go to all sorts of schools all over Southern California. So in that way, for those 6 years that I was mainly a percussionist playing professionally, I also had the Pacific Percussion Ensemble, and that was my teaching. It wasn't exactly what I'd planned on doing, but it worked out great. And we were exposed to so many more kids than I would have just in a classroom.
But you eventually ended up in teaching classrooms.
So when I came back from Israel, I went back into professional work for about 1.5 years, and then I decided it was time to get my professional teaching career going. And I ended up, my first job was at Huntington Beach High School, I had the orchestra and 2 guitar classes. I was kind of part-time and then went full-time the following year. And from Huntington Beach, then I went to Glendale High School, did 4 years there, then moved on to Chapman College, and on and on and on. Actually, when I graduated USC, I taught at a number of universities teaching percussion. Immaculate Heart College, Mount St. Mary's. I couldn't land a real job doing percussion, let's say at Cal State Northridge, because I was just still so green. I was just out of college and nobody wanted to hire me. When I came back from Israel, I had a sort of a reputation and people were calling me for jobs.
But how did Huntington Beach lead you to the OCSA?
So,
And explain what OCSA is and what those initials stand for.
Okay.
And tell me about all that you did in that program.
all right. So I'm at Glendale High School, and I get a call from Chapman College that one of the professors is going to take a year leave of absence. So my wife Melody and I decided we would move to Orange County. She'd look for a job here. I went to Chapman for 5 years. Then I went into the Capistrano Unified School District for 20 years. And then I retired. And the day that I retired from teaching in the Capistrano District, which was great, 6 hours later, I had an interview at OCSA, the Orange County School of the Arts. It's located in Santa Ana. And I got the job at OCSA.
Tell me what OCSA has to do with the show Glee.
So OCSA is the performing arts school, just like the one in New York that Glee was modeled after. And this is our version here on the West Coast. Fabulous school, both a junior high and a high school. It's academic in the morning till 2, and then it turns into a conservatory in the afternoon with 2 classes each day till 5.
How do kids get into that program?
So each year there's about 3,000 students plus that audition for the various conservatories. Maybe 300 kids will get in the next year.
And is that all singing and dancing?
It's singing, dancing, cooking, music, poetry.
Tell me a little bit more about OCSA when you started and how it developed until you finally retired from that.
Yeah. So I spent 11 years at OCSA. It was my dream job. I couldn't have been happier to do that at the end of my teaching career. So I interviewed and got a job doing the concert orchestra, which I did all 11 years that I was there. It was a group of like 13 kids when I started, and it was a full symphony orchestra of over 50 when I left. After 2 years, the head of the department retired and asked if I would take over that position. So for 4 years, I ran the Instrumental Music Conservatory. I built it from a little over 220 students to over 400 students. We also developed a commercial music program while I was there. So it was so much fun putting it together and working with all of my colleagues. And so while I was at OCSA, I got very active with the music theater department. In fact, my first year there, I conducted a performance of Little Women. That was great because musicals, as I said, are something that I just love doing. So that was fun. So I got very active with the theater department. And so as time went on, we realized that the talent at OCSA was incredible. So we started using some of the very talented students at OCSA as part of South Coast Symphony's Broadway concerts. We'd bring in some Broadway stars and work with them before the concert with the OCSA students.
Barry, I want to hear about the South Coast Symphony itself.
For about 12 years, I taught the Saddleback College Symphony Orchestra. And then I was up for the full-time position, and unfortunately, or fortunately, I didn't get that job. And about 3 or 4 days later, the head of the music department at Saddleback College, Al Brightbill, called me up and he said, "Barry, why don't you start your own symphony?" Well, a little light bulb went off in my head. And so for the next week or so, I contacted a number of people in Aliso Viejo, the Chamber of Commerce, Coast Hills Church, because it was such a large facility. And then we had an orchestra meeting. at one of the homes of our orchestra members. And we had about 55 people at that meeting where we said, what do you think? What do you think about starting our own orchestra? And they loved the idea. They gave us over $5,000 at that meeting, and we were able to put on our first concert 2 months later, and we did it at Coast Hills Church.
Well, good evening, and welcome to your new orchestra, the Symphony. Wow, look at all of you. From now on, whenever we have a concert, I'm just going to say new in the papers. I know you'll all tune up again.
So at that point, we decided to do a 3-concert season, which we did for a few years. And at that point, we were called the Aliso Viejo Symphony. We formed our first orchestra alliance. And we had a number of wonderful people that helped support the symphony. And then 5 years later, we then switched over to the South Coast Symphony and got the tagline, the Unstuffy Symphony. During those first 5 years, we decided we wanted to do concerts for kids. And South Shores Church was the first place that we decided to do it. We did Carnival of the Animals. We had a little musical zoo outside. We invited the kids in, and we had an okay turnout. It was on a Saturday morning. Then we continued that. It wasn't called Concert for Kids at that time, but by the next year, we'd come up with the name Concert for Kids and did it on a Saturday morning at Coast Hills Church. Not a great turnout. And we realized that here in Orange County, what's big on Saturdays is sports. That's numero uno. So at that point, we started talking with the Capistrano Unified School District. We got their support, so much support that they paid for the buses to bring the kids to our Concert for Kids during the school day with their teachers.
Wow.
And that lasted for any number of years. When we went through some hard times a few years later, they couldn't fund it anymore. And they turned it over to the Capistrano Unified School District Foundation. They picked up the ball and they funded it. And then they ran out of money. And then we funded it through grants. So, because there's no money comes in on the Concert for Kids. It only goes out, pays for the venue, pays for the musicians, pays for all the costs of the soloists and the artists. As part of what we do for the Concert for Kids, it's a 45-minute presentation, multimedia, professionally narrated, and the kids get so excited about music, especially classical music and the kind of music that a symphony orchestra can play. Film scores of Hollywood, some of the songs from Broadway, jazz, all sorts of different styles, opera.
Tell me about the young artists, the very young artists that you always have perform at those kids' concerts.
That goes back to the concerto competition that we did at Saddleback College with the symphony orchestra. And then once we started the symphony, maybe 2 years into the symphony, we started our Young Stars of the Future. In that particular program, it's really, we wanted to go with the most outstanding soloists that live or study in Orange County and keep it an Orange County event. First year we had 3 wonderful, wonderful musicians, young musicians, perform for us. And I thought afterwards, how can we ever find 3 more kids like that? But Orange County just kept blossoming with talent and incredible teachers, so we were able to just do better and better each year.
How many people audition? How many young people audition for these?
So when we first started out, we had maybe up to 50 people auditioning, and there were usually only 3 spots open. As the years developed, and we honed in on some incredible talent, some of the teachers started to realize their students didn't hold a chance. So sometimes it went down to 12, 13, 15. You know, it was much lower number, but the quality was unbelievable. We had professors from USC and the Colburn School and some of the other major universities and private academies that would send their very, very best students to us.
So you went out of Orange County for the young people?
No, we stayed in Orange County. They were only allowed to have students that lived in Orange County.
I see.
And or studied in Orange County.
I see.
So we still kept the Orange County perspective.
And how many years have you had the young artists?
That's been going on 21 years. We've had over 55 students win now. We give $1,000 scholarships, thanks to the Macbeth Foundation, along with the opportunity to perform for the Symphony. And then a few years after we started it, we had alumni concerts where we would invite back the students a number of years later that now were in university or starting their careers in music, and they would perform along with some of the younger students.
Tell me about the audience, their age, their size. What is your number of patrons?
We have, well, that's hard to say because there's different audiences for different concerts.
Sure. I'm thinking of your major classical series.
I would say we have, on a regular basis, 600 to 800 people. And with our new streaming series, Unstuffy and Unstoppable, we're averaging now 300 to 400 or 500 hits of views, and many of those are families.
And what is the average age of your audience?
I think, like most orchestras, they're seniors. We're doing our very best to bring in young people. We involve a lot of young people as ushers to get them involved in what we're doing. I think the Concert for Kids gets them so excited about a symphony orchestra, a live symphony orchestra, and the exciting music that we play, that eventually they'll be coming back when they have families.
I've noticed after a concert, you have a lot of young people that come up on stage. They take care of the stands and help us cart the instruments. Who are they?
We can thank our volunteer from our alliance. They organize kids from 3 or 4 different high schools in Orange County. And these kids come, many of them are involved in their music programs, some in other clubs, some in scholarship clubs, and they want to get some credit for doing after-school activities. And they come early on at 5 o'clock, and they stay till 9:30 or 10.
They're really nice kids.
Great kids.
I've seen a lot of them as we do our work.
They all dress up, and we promise them drinks and pizza.
Yeah, it's great. I would like to know more about the Alliance. Tell me about the Alliance. What, is that different than the board?
Yes, so we have our regular board, again, all volunteers, and then we have our Alliance, which is the fundraising and front of house group of adult volunteers. And we also have the Junior Alliance, which are all those students, 30 to 35 students you see at our concerts. The Alliance fundraises for us, puts on galas, casino nights, bridge nights, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and they run the front of house. So they run our boutique, they're in charge of the ushers, the refreshments,
A lot of work.
tickets, yeah.
A lot of work. You live such a fast-paced life. Who keeps you sane?
It's my wife, Mel.
Tell me about
She
her.
just keeps me grounded. And she and I share one thing very much in common. We like to keep busy. Even when we go on vacation, we take our computers with us. We're spending the majority of the morning working. no matter where we happen to be, we'll find a beautiful idyllic spot, pull out the computers, and enjoy where we happen to be. And then the rest of the day is fun. We go snorkeling, we go swimming, we go hiking.
How did you meet Melody?
So when I was living in Huntington Beach and teaching at Huntington Beach High School, Melody was doing her final year at Cal State Long Beach. We lived in the Continentals in Huntington Beach. These were condos. And I lived in one, then there was a neighbor, and then Melody lived in the corner unit. And the people in the middle unit invited us over one evening to meet each other. And Melody spent all of 20 minutes, then she had to go pick up her father at the airport, and that was that. And 3 weeks later, I invited her over for dinner, and the rest is history.
So did you cook?
I did cook. You want to hear my cooking story? So
Yes.
The first night I cooked for Melody, and I made my favorite meals, steak and potatoes and what have you. And while I was cooking the steak, I went upstairs to take a quick shower. And when I came back downstairs, the entire kitchen was on fire. So there was flames going up, and there was black all the way up to the ceiling. So I quickly got the steaks out. I threw them in the sink and threw baking soda over them. And then I washed up all of the black that was on the walls. Melody came over while I was doing that. And she thought, oh, look at how neat he is. She really liked a neat guy. But she saw I was still cleaning up, so she went back to her apartment. At that point, I cleaned off the steaks. I guess I washed the baking soda off of them and served them to her that night. And that was that.
Tell me about your big San Bernardino. What kind of dogs do you have?
Dogs. So right now we have 2 St. Bernards.
St. Bernards.
Jacques and Hannah. We had a St. Bernard before these 2, and wherever we would walk them, Beethoven. So I named the next dog we had Jacques. Actually, it's Dvorak.
Okay.
But Jacques for short. So these are our 2 St. Bernards. This is Jacques, and he's a boy, and he can't wait for his treat. And this is Hannah. She's our girl. They're about 3 years apart. Jacques. Okay, there you go. Hannah, can you sit up? Oh, good girl. Good girl. And they love the house. They love our yard. All right, you guys go play. We're all done.
You've done so much for significant amounts of time in different segments of your life. It's interesting to hear you talk about beginning from high school, early education, to going to USC as a graduate. And then from there, your career that went from basically the LA Phil to Israel. And then as you came back, you finally got back into teaching, which was one of your second majors.
Correct.
At USC. And so now you're not retired, but we're stuck with COVID.
Right.
But your creativity is immense and endless. So in your life, I find you to be such a creative person. It's an honor to be part of you.
And your question is? So
You've not fired me yet.
it's so wonderful to have you with the symphony.
Well, I've only played for a few years with you, but it's been wonderful.
You know, talking about creativity, I've often thought of myself as Johann Sebastian Bach. Not being a great composer or anything, but Bach synthesized what happened in the Baroque period. He came at the very end of the period, and he put it all together. And so Bach's music really is the peak of what Baroque music was all about. And I don't know how creative I am. I just take a lot of other people's ideas and kind of put them together for our symphony.
Well, it's magnificent.
But I'm not Bach.
No, you're Barry Silverman of the Unstuffy and Unstoppable Orchestra.
Thank you.
Finally, Barry, what would you most like to tell your patrons of the South Coast Symphony?
Well, we have such loyal patrons, as well as loyal orchestra musicians, but our patrons are just something really special. Without their financial support as angels, there's just no way we'd even have an orchestra. And without our volunteers in the symphony, there's no way we could have started an orchestra. It's just too expensive. So a big thank you to all of our patrons that come out and attend all of our concerts and send us such wonderful notes as they send in their money for their subscription season. Those are so appreciative.
And what about the 25th anniversary?
So we were hoping for the 25th that we could get to one of the major halls in Orange County like Segerstrom or where the Pacific Symphony performs.
Or SoCA.
And go back to SoCA when we love that hall. So we're currently working on that. Of course, no halls are open right now. So but this is a good time to negotiate.
Exactly.
Yes, so we're doing that, and we would love to be in a major concert hall for our 25th anniversary season and do a special concert.
Knowing you, it will happen.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed our visit together. If you like our episodes, please share them with your friends and family on Facebook, along with a link to our website, www.southcoastsymphony.org. The best way to watch all of our episodes is on your smart TV using the YouTube app. Just type into the search engine South Coast Symphony. Once there, click subscribe, like, and share. It's free, and it will help us get more visibility for our episodes, and we thank you. Also, thanks for your continued support and patronage. As you know, word of mouth is the best way to let friends and family know all about our online music series. I look forward to having you back again next Friday evening at 7 p.m. So until then, good night.